Welcome, and good afternoon. Thank you all so much for joining our first live stream today. Really appreciate seeing so many on. Uh, some of you may know me, some of you may have heard about the stream from others. For the purpose of this video, you can call me Mackenzie or Ken. That's way less syllables, so feel free to go with Ken. I'm super excited to have everyone on today. Today is the beginning of a series we'll be doing on helping you to understand the internet. Obviously, the internet's not going anywhere. Maybe 25 years ago, we thought it was a fad, but it is here to stay. And so the objective is to make sure that you feel capable and confident with just a little bit of extra understanding. The objective, in short, is to make it make sense. You know, the internet is not magic. It doesn't require a PhD, for you to understand it. For example, perhaps you remember as a kid watching your parents drive a manual transmission, right? Maybe it was four on the floor, or maybe they had the gear shift right next to the steering wheel. And it seemed like a superpower watching them drive that way, right? It seemed like they knew some kind of special trick. But by the time you were 13 or 14, you'd seen it so much. Maybe you got to sit in their lap and change the gears, and it seemed way less magical, right? Just with a little bit of knowledge. And then in time you were doing it and you realized it wasn't difficult at all. Well, really the same is true about technology. Just a little bit of understanding can open up a lot of things for you. And soon you'll be able to understand what's going on, diagnose the challenges that you're facing, fix them yourself. You'll be able to avoid headaches when you're dealing with your devices, and you'll be able to avoid scammers, which of course is extremely important given the world that we're living in today. With that being said, a couple of things we want to hit on. The best part about the live streaming format is you can give me feedback in real time. So if you just look at the bottom there on your screen, if you click on the chat, you can actually respond. So there's a thumbs up, there's a heart, different things, and I'll call for some interactions here and there. But if at any point, hey, Mackenzie, you're going way too fast, slow down, you can just type it in the chat and let me know. I've got my eye on it so I can see if there's anything going on. I'll be aware of it and I'll be sure to adjust it for you. Also, if you notice, for example, that we've touched on a topic, but we haven't gone into enough detail for you to feel confident, don't worry. I'll let you know that there will be additional sessions on that topic as they're on the schedule. But if you check the schedule on our YouTube and you don't see what you're looking for, just put it in the chat. I'll read all the messages. I'll make sure that we get it on the calendar so we can discuss whatever it is that you need more information about. So that's the power of live streaming. The other thing is sometimes maybe you've got a very specific question, something that's been bothering you. It's just tap dancing on your last nerve. It is grinding your gears to the bits there. And maybe it's a device or maybe it's something else. There's two ways I can offer help for you in that way. I've got a private question and answer live stream that I'll do, and I'll put the link at the end of this session. I'll put the link to join that private question and answer session. It's very much like this, but I won't have a single topic to discuss. I'm only going to be answering your questions. So it's beneficial if you have a question, but even if you don't have a specific question, maybe someone asks where or how to do something that you've been curious about, you could get the answer there. So something to think about. And then also, and those will be on Mondays, by the way. The other thing you can do is if you feel like you need a little more time, you need some repetition, some one-on-one support, we do also have one-on-one sessions that you can schedule. These are usually 30 minutes or an hour. There's nothing for you to download. We just do a video chat right on our website. I'll also put that link in the chat as well so that you can access both of those things. Great question in the chat about how to check the schedule. If you go to our YouTube page, for example, you go to our YouTube page. In fact, you know what? I may be able to share it with you. Give me 1 second and I can show you exactly where to look to find it. Let's take a look here. All right, perfect. So this is our YouTube page. When you go to YouTube, this is how it'll look for you. If you're on your computer, if you're on your phone, obviously it'll be a bit smaller. But the schedule is always going to be right here. under live for our live streams, right? So right now we're live. You can see that this is number 1, Internet Basics. Tomorrow you can see the schedule, September 17th, same time. We're going to talk about email. A lot of information about email coming up tomorrow. And then on Thursday, we will talk about websites. So that's where you can find the schedule. I will always update it at the beginning of the week so you know what to expect. No secrets, no surprises. We want to make sure you've got all the information that you need in advance. But great question. Thank you for throwing that in the chat. All righty. Let's get into our topic for today, which is the basics of the internet. Now, if you were a person that was born before the dot-com bubble, I'm sure you remember the beginnings of the internet, right? It was a fun new thing, and there was really only one way to access it. If you lived in America during the mid to late 90s, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There was only one way to get on the internet. We all did it, right? It was the exact same thing for all of us. You go to your mailbox, and there would be a CD-ROM in the mailbox with 3 letters, right? AOL, right? That was how we first got on the internet, was using AOL. We all pretty well remember that, right? You could get maybe 30 hours or 50 hours or maybe 100 hours, right? And it would connect you to the internet by means of your telephone line. So if you were using AOL, you couldn't be on the phone and be on the internet, right? Because the phone was the internet back in those days, and it'd make that horrible screechy sound when it was logging on. I'm sure you all remember that. Throw me a thumbs up in the chat if you remember that sound of logging on using the phone line with the AOL disk. And of course, you'd pop on as soon as it connected. Inevitably, you'd hear, "You've got mail," right? And we loved that, right? That was our introduction to the internet. That was our first ride on what they called back then the information superhighway. But things have changed a lot. The highway's bigger, it's faster, it's more developed. But the highway is actually a very good way to visualize the internet, to think about the way the internet works. And really, this will help you to understand a lot about the internet. So let's just kind of build this idea out a little bit of the internet being like the highway, right? It's just like a highway. How is that the case? Well, the highway takes you from your residential area to where other things are, right? And you can think of the internet in that way. It's just a way for you to quickly get from one place to another online, right? So of course, websites, social media, there's so many entertainment options on the internet. It feels like every week you have to buy a new streaming service to watch a sport or a show that you like. There's educational content, but we can get from where we are to where we want to be on this information superhighway. Now, to get on the internet, right? To get on the internet, of course, or rather to get on the highway, you can't just go from a surface street, right? A drive or a boulevard and just be on the highway. You have to take an on-ramp, right? There's no two ways about it. That's just how you get on the highway. Well, your router in your house, that Wi-Fi box, that is like the on-ramp, right? For the internet. For your phone, of course, it's different. You use something different. You use the cell phone towers that you probably see all over the community to connect to the internet, and those towers serve as the router. But we'll talk about that. We've got a live stream coming up in a week or so about the difference between home internet, Wi-Fi, and mobile internet. So we'll get into the details of that. But for now, you can just keep this in mind. Your Wi-Fi router box in your house is just like the on-ramp, right? So as we think about this, let's just, I think the kids say lock in, right? That means we just need to focus and really seal this information into our minds. If that on-ramp is like getting on the highway, that router is like how we get onto this information highway, then if we're having a problem with our internet, maybe it's slow or maybe we can't connect at all, let's illustrate it like this. if you remember back in the day before we had the digital radios that we have in our car, or maybe on your stereo system, we would have those dials, and you had to tune the dial in just right to get the radio station you were looking for. So, for example, if you were looking for 88.5, right? If you were tuned into 89.1, could you hear what was broadcasting on 88.5? No, it wasn't tuned in enough. You actually might hear a completely different station or nothing at all. And the same is true with 88.1 or 88.3. The closer you got to 88.5, maybe you could hear it. But until you hit that exact location on the dial, you couldn't hear the radio station. But it's also very true when it comes to the internet. The further you are from this on-ramp or your Wi-Fi box, your router, the further you are away from it, the weaker that connection is. So it's harder for you to get a solid signal. So let's think about this. If you're too far away, you can't connect. If that is the case, then you need to move closer. Does that make sense? Thumbs up if that makes sense to you, that it's just like the radio. If you're too far away, you're not going to be able to tune in and connect to the internet. And if you've had this happen in your house, let's say you're in your backyard, or let's say you're in your kitchen, or maybe even in your bed, and like the internet's working, that it's not an issue with the actual internet itself. It's just that you're too far away from it. Here's a couple of things that you can do. Number one, you can reach out to your internet provider. Thanks for that feedback, guys. You can reach out to your internet provider and you can ask them to upgrade your router. It will put out a stronger signal, which means you'll be able to get on that on-ramp from multiple places within the house, a bigger radius of places within your house. A second thing you can do is to ask them to move your router to another location in your home. So let's say, for example, you don't really need the internet when you're in the backyard, but you'd like to have it when you're upstairs or in the front yard of your home. If you've got like a nice front porch for sitting, you can move the location of your router. A third thing you can do is install repeaters, right? You can get something that's like an extra lane, so to speak, for that on-ramp. And so any of those things can make your signal stronger. It'll make it much easier to have a stable signal. You just call your internet service provider. Speaking of internet service providers, it doesn't really matter how much money any one of us have. None of us owns the internet. We have to pay to access it. And actually, if you want to go have a faster connection, you usually have to pay more monthly for that connection. This may also remind you of being on the highway and using the toll lanes, right? Because you have to pay to get into that toll. And so you pay your toll to your internet provider. We got a great question in the chat on what a repeater is. I gave a very, very simple explanation. We'll talk about what a repeater is in greater detail when we get into the Wi-Fi versus mobile internet, which will probably be next week. So we don't want to use too much time on that, but great question. We are going to get into it into more detail. So back to the internet service provider. They give you access to the internet. You have to pay for that access. And so it's just like using a toll lane. So whether you have Comcast or Verizon or Charter or T-Mobile or Google Fi, whatever, it's the same basic concept. You pay these companies for access to the internet, right? It's just like getting using a toll lane when you are on the highway. So let's just do a little review. We've kind of covered a lot of information. Let's just back it up. So back in the day, in the 90s, that probably may not feel like back in the day for some, but really that's 30 something years ago. They used to call the internet the information superhighway. And that was a really good illustration. As we see, the internet is like a mega highway, and we connect to it using that on-ramp, which is our router at home. But to use the internet, we have to pay our toll, so to speak, our monthly toll to the internet service provider to access it. All right, let's move on a little bit and talk about how we get on the internet, because it's not in our minds yet. We've got some advanced technology, but we haven't gotten to just in the mind. You have to have something to get on the internet. So it's just a general question. What was your first car? What was your first car that you owned? Maybe you had one of these, a Mustang. Maybe you had one of these, Chevelle. Maybe you had a beautiful Nova, SS Nova, 1968, one of my favorite cars. Maybe your first car was the family truck on the farm, right? Just the 3-gear transmission Ford 100. Or maybe you had that big body GTO, King of the Road, right? Either way, whatever your first car was, your device is just like a car that you drive on the highway. So that can be your computer, that could be your tablet, that could be your laptop, that could be your cell phone. It could even be, now with modern technology, your refrigerator or other appliances around your home, your thermostat. Any of those things can be the device that you use to connect to the internet. Without a device, you can't connect. It's impossible for now. We'll see what the future holds. But one unique feature of every single car on the road, no matter how nice, how new, doesn't matter, every single car has a license plate. And that license plate is super important because it's a way for you to be uniquely identified when you're on the road, right? It helps with security. It helps with other things like to make sure that your insurance is paid and things of that nature. So on your device, it has a license plate, so to speak. And that is something called an IP address, right? So you can see there at the bottom there, right? Your device will have an IP address. It's not super important for you to know how this works. It's just important to know that it exists. And the reason it's important is because a lot of people will tell you, oh, you can be anonymous on the internet if you use, something that's encrypted, or you use this VPN. The simple truth is we're never anonymous because our devices are always connected to an IP address. Very, very important to remember because a lot of people like to sell these tools and say, okay, this is how you can make sure the government's not listening. Every single device has an IP address. Just important to keep that in mind. And like cars on the highway, every device has certain insurance protections, security that's built into it, right? And I know it is a point of frustration, a huge point of frustration, having to type in your password over and over and over again. Sometimes every time you use a device, every time you go to use it, you have to put the password in. I know that is so irritating. No one loves it. And now they do something called multi-factor authentication, or MFA. This is just another way for you to have to put in a password. And I know it's frustrating, but it's really, really important that we get into the routine of just accepting to put in passwords. It's a really important protection. And we've got a live stream coming up in the next week or so where we'll talk about not just passwords, but multi-factor authentication and staying safe on the internet, why these things are so important. They really are a protection for you, but I know it's frustrating. I really do understand that, but you'll see why it's so important when we get to that live stream. I believe we'll have that next Thursday, but don't hold me to that. Okay, so you're on the highway. You're not just going for a leisure drive, right? It's not just a Sunday drive. You're going somewhere if you're on the highway, right? Inevitably, the highway is going to take you to a part of town with shops, businesses, maybe government buildings, libraries, things of that nature, right? So when you're on your device, exact same thing is true, right? You get on the internet and you can go to all sorts of different websites, things that are storefronts, other businesses, and other buildings. I put shopping because I think that is the thing that unites us all. Besides social media, we all are on the internet buying something or interacting with others. But there's tons of websites for all sorts of purposes. Of course, shopping, but you can get information. You can also learn using websites like Wikipedia. You can get news from various websites as well. And then, of course, there's social media. And there's a lot to say about that. But before we get into it, let's just hit one really important point. Every business has an address, right? As you see there on that brick building, 9793 or 979 East 3rd Street, right? That address is a unique identifier for that building. If you type in any other address into your GPS, it wouldn't take you there, right? You would end up somewhere else. So the internet works in a very similar way. Every website has an address. They call it a web address, and we'll talk about accessing those more in just a second. But that website, what we call a website, for example, you may say facebook.com. That is a URL, or a uniform resource locator. You don't need to memorize that. Don't even waste your time. URL is more than enough, but most people call it domain, right? A domain name. That's what we call it. You can see down there at the bottom, in the case of Google, it's www.google.com. That domain is where its location, right, on the internet. If, for example, you typed Google, but you put in 2 G's, it would not take you to Google. Well, actually, you know what? I'm wrong. All the giant companies have bought the mistake names, right? So they know if you spell Facebook with an S instead of a C, right? Facebook has actually purchased that, and it redirects you to Facebook. But for the most part, for smaller websites, for smaller companies or smaller entities, if you don't type the URL incorrectly, you won't land at the place that you are looking for. So that's really important. And we'll talk about why that's important during our websites episode, as well as on email. It's really important because the nefarious actors, the scammers out there in the world, they hope that you won't check this. Their hope is that you'll just give it a quick glance, not give it really much focus, and that you'll end up on their website instead of the website that you're looking for. I've got an interesting story that happened to a friend of mine just last week related to that. So we'll look forward to that during our websites episode this Thursday at 1:30 Eastern. Also, we'll talk a lot about social media. We all use it. We're on social media right now. YouTube is social media. That is one of the things that we most frequently associate with being on the internet. So be on the lookout for that one as well. We talked earlier about this idea of the address, right? You can still see that on the slide there. How do we access that place, right? That location on the internet? How do we get there? It's not magic. Again, it's always something simple. If you were in your car, how would you be able to find out that you were at the correct address? You just look through your windshield, right? It's just that simple. You look through your windshield, you confirm, yep, that's exactly where I want to be. And then you go into the building. The exact same thing is true when it comes to being online. A web browser works just like your windshield, right? It allows you to access websites, right? So you can see as you're on the internet, you can see exactly what stores or what websites that you are passing. Now, this is really, really important for us to keep in mind. And the reason it's important is because sometimes we just say, oh, I'm online. But there's more than one way to access information on the internet, because there's apps as well, right? And apps are something totally different. We'll talk in the future about the difference between an application and using a web browser. Some popular web browsers are Google Chrome. You might recognize those logos there. Google Chrome, Safari, Opera, Bing, all these, Firefox, these are web browsers, and they let you look into the web sites from your device, right? Just like the windshield of your car would allow you to. So let's take a peek at how a web browser works. So we've got a couple of things labeled here. So for example, on number 1, you can see that there's an arrow pointing backwards. I may have looked reverse for you, sorry. The arrow is pointing backwards and it's indicating to you that you can go back. That little section in green with the number 1, it's called the navigation pane. And clear, of course, that's where you navigate on your web browser, right? You can go backwards. If you were on a page, you went forward, you clicked on something, and it turns out that's not what you were looking for at all, no problem. You just hit that back on the navigation pane and it takes you to the previous page. In fact, you can just keep clicking back and it'll take you all the way back to where you started. That's really important to know because that means you're never really lost on the internet. If you're on your web browser and you're like, oh, this isn't what I was looking for, just go to that navigation pane and click back. It'll take you back to where you were before. You can reorient yourself and you can figure out what you're looking for from there. And that's one really nice thing. There were some really intelligent, nerdy people back in the day that figured out these web browsers, but they tried to make it as easy for us as possible to get around. And so little tools like that, there's always cues, right, that they're trying to give us so that we can use our web browsers effectively. So that's the first thing. Number 1 is the navigation pane. Number 2 is reload. And this is also in most every web browser, whether it's, web browser on your phone, on your computer, on your TV, any of these things, they're all going to have both that navigation pane and the reload. The reason you may need reload is various things could happen. The page could fail to load properly, so you can tell like there should be a picture somewhere and it's not there. Or maybe you get that little error message like 404, something has happened. You just click that reload and it'll try to access the page again. It's almost like when you're using your GPS and it says you have arrived and you look around and you're like, wait a minute, I don't see what you're talking about. And you just start the GPS over and look at the map. You can see that, oh, I'm close, but I'm not quite there. You had to go back and relook at it. It's the exact same idea with reload, right? You just reload that page and it will try to get that page opened up for you again. However, if you do see an error message like that, it can often be a clue that your internet is out. And usually it will say very explicitly, you do not have internet connection or there's no network connection. So that's your cue that maybe you need to go to your on-ramp to your router and take a look at it. Maybe you need to unplug it, plug it back in. And if that doesn't work, you may even need to call your internet service provider. So just a little tip there. Number 3 that you can see there is something called Open New Tab. So just like the windshield of your car can only show you so much, there's only so much glass real estate, so to speak, right, that you can look through. We want to have lots of information on the screen of the device that we're looking at, but unfortunately, there's only so much that they can share with us. So let's just take a situational example. Let's say you decide, if you're Southern like me, you probably have times where you're like, you know what, I would really love, how about some banana pudding? I'd love some banana pudding, right? And maybe you're thinking, I'll look up a recipe. So you look up a recipe. Let's say you land on this one. You land on this one on Bon Appetit, right? And it sounds really nice, right? And it looks good too, right? That's a very unique take on a banana pudding. Okay, why don't we give it a try? But when you read a little bit more about it, you think, well, you know what? I don't know. Maybe this is a little more than I felt like doing. For example, it says you need to get a piping bag out. I don't want to get a piping bag out. I just want to layer it up like my grandma used to and have a nice fall dessert. So if that's the case, you see right here at the top, you've got a plus sign. That plus sign, you see how it says new tab right there? New tab right there. When you click on this, it will give you a new tab with nothing on it. It's just blank. So all you have to do is type in banana pudding recipe and you search for it. Now, your original recipe that you looked up is still here. It's still on that previous tab. It didn't go anywhere, but there's only so much real estate on the screen. So rather than having a bunch of things just covering up the whole screen, it's just tucked away in this same window just along here. And then you can find something simple that's highly rated. There's a beautiful one right here, 7 hours and 15 minutes. Maybe we don't want that one either. But the point is, this is how that open new tab works. It's really important because you can have hundreds of tabs. I've got a beloved family member. I think at one point she had 127 tabs open on her phone, right? We can have as many as we want, so we don't have to worry about saving anything. We just keep the tab open and it's there. Just like we've still got this here. We've still got our friendly tech help page up. It's still there. We don't have to worry about it. So that was number 3, open new tab. Number 4 is something called the address bar, right? The address bar. This is where we type in the web address that we want to visit, right? So you can see there it says www.google.com. That's where you can do your check. That's where you can make sure that it's working the way you want it to work, or that you're going to the website that you want to go to. But it's critical, again, that we check exactly what it says, right? Exactly what is up there, because we may make an error when we're typing, right? And it could send us to a malicious website, and we do not want that to happen. We want to be in the habit of double and triple checking, and that's really important. We're going to talk about that not on a live stream, but you'll want to check our YouTube for shorts. We're going to talk about why it's so important that we double and triple check things while we're on the internet. It's a huge protective thing that you just want to be in the habit of doing. So that's the address bar. You type that in where to find the website that you're looking for. It's much like a GPS or when you're on the internet, which is the highway. Number 5, you'll notice, you've seen this plenty of times. Now, this is the Google Chrome web browser. If you use Safari, it looks very different. If you're accustomed to using Apple, it looks very different. It has a red, yellow, green instead of these 3 things here. But we'll just for now focus on this one. We will have a comparison live stream as well, where we talk about what the differences are, why in some cases people prefer Android or Apple. We're not getting into a debate about which is better, because it doesn't actually matter. It's just personal preference, right? So what we need to know, though, is that these 3 web controls, window controls, are critical that we understand how they work, because they can unlock a lot of real estate on our screen. So let's say, for example, you're on your computer and you've got your web browser open, Google Chrome, and you've had another page open or another app open, but now your Google Chrome is covering the screen. That first thing, it just looks like a line. So if you're on a computer right now, if you look at the top right, you'll see there's a line. If you click on that, it drops that whole window down into the bar at the bottom, right? It hasn't gone anywhere really. It's just tucked away there. And then when you find the same icon of that exact same thing, so in Google Chrome, right, you see what these icons look like here. You just find that at the bottom of your screen, and when you click on it, it brings it right back to full screen. But let's say you want to do 2 things at once, right? You're feeling like it's time to multitask. If that's the case, then you want to use the second one. It's called resize. And it looks like 2 squares, almost like you were about to draw one of those cubes, right? Where you put 2 squares on top of each other and then you connect them at 45-degree angles, right? It looks like you're about to draw one of those, but it's just the 2 squares. When you click on that, it will make that window smaller. So you can put 2 windows side by side on your computer. And I have my screen set up that way now. I've got the notes of the things that I want to talk about. I can also see the chat where people are talking, and I can also see the screen where I'm working. And so you can use that to move things around on the screen, so you can do multiple things at once. Now, you may not feel comfortable doing that, and don't feel bad. There's no need to actually use your computer in that way. It's just an option. Now, after you click on resize, it's going to change what is in that spot. It's very dynamic. It'll go from 2 squares to 1 square. And the reason that happens is it goes from resize to maximize. So after you've clicked resize, those 2 squares are going to transform into 1 square. And if you click that 1 square, it'll blow it back up on your screen all over again, right? The full screen will be covered with that particular window. Does that make sense? If you're still with me, give me a heart in the chat, just so I know that you're still with me, because we've talked about a lot and we've got 2 more really important subjects to hit. We're almost done with the web browser, as you can see. But give me a heart in the chat if you're with me, if you understand that window control. You got your minimize, straight line, you got your resize, right, or maximize after you've clicked it. And then you've got, of course, on the far right, close, right? That X, that's always your cue. If you see something on the top right, an X, that means you're going to close that window, right? That's the purpose of that. All right, we got some hearts. We're still working. All right, this next topic is so important, so important. It's number 6 out of 6. So again, there's only so much space on the screen. You can only see so much at a time. All the things that your web browser could do, if they tried to put all of that on the screen, it would be a nightmare. You remember, well, maybe your mom wasn't like this, but my mom, when she'd come in and look in my room and she'd say, this place is a pigsty, because I had stuff everywhere. Did your mom ever call your room a pigsty when you had your laundry everywhere and your stuff just all over the place and it looked chaotic and not organized? That's what would happen if they tried to put every single functionality of the web browser on the screen at once. So what they do is, if you look really closely, right up there, right there where the 6 is, it's 3 dots in a stack. Now, the people that make websites call that a kebab, right? Because if you stuck a stick through the 3 pieces, it looked like a kebab, right? And the reason you want to know about kebabs, because it is a signal to you. It's a sign for you. Every time you see a kebab, 3 dots stacked up like that on any website, that is a cue. That means there is hidden functions. There are hidden functions behind that. So in the case of a web browser, when you click on that, it's going to have so many options. It's going to show you, hey, here's the passwords you saved. Here's your history. If you want to go in and do any kind of developer things, this is not the chat for you. This is something very basic, but all that functionality is hidden behind the kebab. So you can test this out for yourself. If you go on your web browser, you'll see if you hit those 3 dots, it's going to open up all these things. And when it opens it up, just click anywhere on the screen. It'll disappear right back behind the 3 dots. But you can go to other apps and you'll see that that exact same functionality is there. This is a cue that all developers use when they make solutions, or what we call applications or websites. That is a sign to you. And we'll talk about this more when we're talking about websites on Thursday, that there's just certain cues that are designed to trigger a thought. So if you see those 3 dots, if you see that kebab, that is a cue that you need to click on it, because there's more functionality that's hidden there. All right, we're done with web browsers. That was a lot, I know, but it's super important because that is how you work around the internet. You need to know how to use a web browser. And if any of that felt like it was over your head, don't worry about it. All you have to do is scroll back on the stream and it'll take you back to that moment, or you can come back to this stream later and just rewatch that scene, right? You don't have to try and figure it out all right now. We record all of these sessions. Just go back and watch it again. You don't have to get it the first time. So we're going to talk about, again, the difference between a website and an app on Thursday. Let's go now and talk about email, right? So at home, you have a mailbox outside of your home, or maybe it's on your front porch, right? And when you go to that mailbox, let's say you're coming home from work, you had a long day. What do you have in there? You know what's in there. A pile of things, a big pile of things, envelopes from all sorts of places. And a lot of times there's going to be important stuff in there, right? There's going to be some bills. There may be some letters, some correspondence. There may be some advertisements, like, for example, maybe a local store sent some coupons, right, to kind of lure you in to go to their website or to go to their brick and mortar business. But of course, there's also the majority of paper mail is junk mail, right? So tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about email. In fact, that's our only topic for tomorrow is email, how to use it, how to be safe. So if you're interested in seeing that, go to our YouTube page, go to the live stream schedule like we looked at earlier, and you just click on that stream for tomorrow and hit notify me. And I'll ping you as soon as we're live. You don't even have to remember what times it starts. I'll send you a notification on YouTube and you'll be able to get that information. Now, let's just take a second, though. We're going to talk about email tomorrow, but there's a concept that we need to really lock in to take with us tomorrow. So let's really focus for just a second. If your email is just like a P.O. box, right, where you just get all sorts of information, you really want to know the location of your P.O. box, right? Same with your email. You need to know what your email address is. So you've got three parts to an email address. You've got what's called the username, which is everything that comes before the @ symbol. Everything that's before the @ symbol is called a username. And of course, you've got the @ symbol, right? It's the A. It's got like a extremely long rat tail, you could say. It kind of wraps around its whole head, right? You've got the @, and then at the end, you've got your email domain. So in this case, it's gmail.com, but it could also be yahoo.com, outlook.com, protonmail.com, icloud.com. All of those are email domains. So when you're giving someone your email address, it needs all three parts: your username, @ symbol, and the email domain. Really, really important. If you leave any of those out, you may not actually get any emails from that person that you shared that with. Of course, on the internet, we've talked about, going to websites. We've talked about email. There's tons of entertainment on the internet. And just a brief blurb about this. I don't want to go on a rant. If you know me in real life, you know I love to go on a rant. I won't rant now. But there's so many different options for entertainment: Netflix, Hulu, and ESPN, and news channels, and Spotify, and Paramount, and Disney Plus, and HBO Max, and on and on and on, right? I promise I'm not going to rant. That was it. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because sometimes we don't realize how much we're spending every month on all these services. So, serious business. Maybe take a minute and just take a look and see how many different services you use for entertainment every single month. You may be overpaying by a lot. In fact, the statistics say that the average American can spend up to $500 a month on different streaming services, between your music, your TV, your news, your movies, etc. And that's not to mention video games if you're into those. So maybe work with a family member or your kids or a friend and just look at your monthly subscriptions, get your bank statement out, and just take a minute and really analyze, do you need each one of these, or are you really even using them? Because you want to be able to not waste your money. So that's the end of that. No more ranting. That's as far as I'm going to take it. All right. So the internet, we've talked a lot. The internet's just like a highway. You use your device, right? Your phone. It's like your car that you're driving on that highway. Your phone has an IP address that's just like your license plate. It's just a unique way to identify your device online. We've got websites that we access by means of web browser, and now you know exactly how to navigate a web browser, which I'm super proud of you for. And again, if it's not locked in, don't worry. Just go back and watch it again. That's the nice part about this format. You can hear it multiple times so that it sinks in. Of course, every website has an address that we call a URL or a domain, and you've got your email, which is just like your P.O. box, right? So we have talked about a lot. We've covered in 45 minutes. And there's so much more we could talk about when it comes to the internet. But I just wanted to give you these basics of navigation and understanding, because when you have the basics, you can build a lot from there. Every rocket scientist started with 1 plus 1, right? Those basics, when you add them up over time, it's amazing the things that you can learn and put together. So, again, we've got our live stream tomorrow. I'll show you one more time. Tomorrow, as you can see, we've got email, exact same time. And you can see there's notify me. You can just click on that and we'll remind you about what time to start. If, for example, you're curious about learning more, we're going to have our private live stream on Monday. That is not going to be on YouTube. That will be on our website, which I will give you the information for here. So let's get that perfectly framed up so you can see everything. There we go. Now you can see it. So if you're using your phone, you wouldn't be able to use that QR code. But if you are using a laptop or you're on your TV to view the live stream, you can just hold your phone up, open the camera, scan that QR. It'll take you to our website and you can sign up to join the live private stream. And that private stream, again, is all question and answer. I'm only there to answer your questions. Or if you've got frustrations, maybe your Roku isn't working, or maybe your device continuously disconnects. Any question you have about technology, you can come there and I'll answer it for you right then and there, and it will be recorded. So you can go back and review it over and over. Every time something goes wrong, you're able to go back and double check on it. You can also just go to our website. If you go to your browser and you type in getfriendly.help, you'll be able to go and access our live streams there, our private live stream. And also, if you're interested in getting one-on-one support, you've got a question that you know is going to take time, or you want multiple opportunities to talk it through, you can also go to our website and set up a one-on-one time there. I've got time slots most every day in the afternoon. Unfortunately, this isn't my only thing that I do. I do have a full-time job, so I just do this during my lunch hour, which is just a few minutes away from being up. But in the afternoons, I definitely make myself available if you need help. I'm happy to do that, and don't feel like it's any sort of bother. As I said in my other video, this is kind of a passion project for me, just to treat others the way you'd want to be treated kind of thing. And I know if I were in a situation where I didn't understand something, what I want is someone to patiently explain it to me. So I'm doing that for others. So our practical takeaways from today, right? If, for example, your internet's going slow, remember you may need to go closer, right? Get closer to it. If your internet seems to be not working and you've still gotten closer, okay, maybe that's a sign that something's wrong. Call your internet service provider, right? Be sure to talk to them if there's a serious problem. You don't have to try and figure it out on your own or feel frustrated. Just call them. You pay them money, call them and figure it out. Or maybe sometimes there was just a brief power outage and you need to unplug it and plug it back in. Very simple ways to get you right back on that information superhighway. So I know we covered so much today. Again, don't forget you can go back and watch the stream, or if you know someone that could really benefit from hearing this kind of content, please share it with them. I really appreciate the support. I am looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe so that we can continue to grow and help as many as possible. I really, really thank everyone for joining today. And look forward to seeing you tomorrow, exact same time. We'll be talking again all about email. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you then. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Really appreciate it. We'll see you next time.